We are
Hi,
still
everyone.
trying to make sense of the settlement, but now TMZ is reporting no money changed hands. We got lawyer Ron Zambrano here to give us his thoughts. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signor, back with Ron Zambrano. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Interesting bookend to this story, but there are more details that we'll talk about, I'm sure, how this process actually works.
It ends with a settlement, Ron, I guess 2 weeks before. Ironically, I got so many things to ask you. Ironically, 2 weeks, like the day before it was discovered that Sony admitted she was asking to delete dailies. Here's Ange from Sony. And then her own deposition, she is asked, did you ask anyone at Sony to destroy the dailies? No, I never asked anyone to destroy the dailies. So there's a lot of us wondering if the timing of this was subject. She's at the Met Gala, Ron. My God, like literally hours before. I guess before I get to specifics, what is your reaction to this? Are you surprised? There's a statement we're going to go through, but broadly, are you surprised it's settled at this point this way?
Well, no, I'm not surprised it's settled. And we could talk more. I don't think we'll ever really know the truth behind the terms of the agreement. Things beyond money, we'll talk about later. I'm not surprised it settled this early. I'm also surprised that Baldoni didn't take more of a hard line. Um, but I'm fairly sure. I'm guessing, I'm speculating that there was something he agreed to say, fine, I will refrain from moving forward on causing you greater embarrassment for in exchange for something, and that something is something we may never learn.
Well, I want to talk about that because here's the statement that he agreed to, which I've got to be honest, I see a lot of Blake fans and people out there reading as admission of guilt. And this was the joint statement that was sort of shared by both parties. It was a product we're a source of pride of, blah, 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 raising awareness, blah, 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 blah. We acknowledge, here's the part I want to focus on. We acknowledge the process presented challenges and recognize concerns raised by Miss Lively deserved to be heard. We remain firmly committed to workplaces free of improprieties and unproductive environments. It is our sincere hope that this brings closure and allows all involved to move forward constructively and in peace, including a respectful environment online. This sounds like the most dumbed down, sanitized version of what I imagine Ryan and Blake were demanding they say. But in a way, it doesn't give Justin anything, in my opinion. When you read this, who does this statement better help?
Yes, I agree with you. This is, I guess, ways in the sense of ways better for Miss Lively, for Blake. And again, there's a lot of wordsmithing here. They're not admitting that there was an unlawful environment. They're just admitting that she brought it up, and this is consistent with what she in that letter you and I talked about in our last video. When we talked, is like we'll admit that she brought up a concern, and we'll admit it raises to the level of protected activity, but they are not admitting, at least then, and I don't think they are now. Again, this is the wordsmithing, that there was any impropriety going on. She just brought it up, and they're being super grown up about it. They being the Wayfair parties, in my opinion, they're taking the higher road. I know it feels like a quote unquote kind of a win for Lively, but I really think if you sit with the language, they're not really admitting they did anything wrong. They're just admitting she raised the concern, and everyone deserves to be heard, and we're resolving this. But I totally see people's point of view going like this feels like a victory in some way for Lively.
Yeah, I mean, how much you talk about the wordsmithing, but I imagine all hands on deck, a million versions back and forth. I imagine you've worked on statements like this where neither side wants to agree, but you got to find some sort of joint point. And I can understand maybe Justin and team almost being sold of, well, you're not admitting, you're just saying she deserved to be heard, right? Is how it's sort of pitched in the room. But then as us, the viewers and the public, well, you're kind of acknowledging that she, there's nothing you're saying you didn't do it. So you're kind of giving in and admitting, yeah, her concerns deserve to be heard, which implies there were legit concerns, which then implies guilt. So do you think this was something that was pushed by Justin? Like, just as someone who's been in that room trying to negotiate the wordsmithing, any insight on how that typically goes?
So what typically goes is that the attorneys have to be okay with it first, between them themselves. And then the clients have to be okay with it because it's really their words, even though the attorneys are involved. So at the end of the day, Baldoni greenlit this, which for me, and I agree with how it's being portrayed and how it's being filtered and how it's being absorbed by the public and people that were Team Baldoni. That's why I think, and speculating, and I have no insider information, that he got something in return for this. Because this is not a neutral statement, right? This is not, it could be, normally it's more like the going forward with the cost of litigations, it is in no one's interest in order to avoid the uncertainties and what can go on forever. We're resolving the case. It could be something really neutral. It could
Right,
have been,
amicably, we move on. There's a way to sort of neither side really wins.
yeah, neither side really wins. So I believe that there is something that we will never know that was done that Baldoni's getting in exchange. And it could be non-monetary things. We could speculate up, forever in exchange for this particular language, where he's like, I'm fine with that because I'm getting something else. Because that's
It's
the only
weird.
way. Yeah.
That's what TMZ is going again, and who knows? But who's telling TMZ this could be what they want to tell them? Right? This could be Blake's team trying to downplay whether they did pay, but their sources are saying with knowledge there was a lot of behind-the-scenes drama in the Lively camp in the days before settlement. We're told Blake brought in a new law firm, Sussman Godfrey. Firm is litigation powerhouse. Among their legal victories, $425 million against Google, $1.6 billion against the Baha Mar Casino. Blah, 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 lots of money. It would seem the point of bringing the firm in would be to litigate the case, but the opposite happened. The settlement statement did not even include an apology from Justin. And interesting how the press is already making it clear he didn't have to apologize, and versus Blake not having to apologize, which Justin wanted. But Deadline, TMZ, they're all making it sound like Justin didn't have to apologize in playing wrongdoing. Things were not going Blake's way, especially after the judge all but gutted the claims she was making. That's at least true. The winners, as you know, the lawyers both made millions, blah, 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 blah. But when you read this, do you think this is just posturing from one of the sides trying to downplay the money, or could that be true?
Yeah, of course it's posturing. Now, listen, now it's PR. Now this is all PR. This has nothing to do with this part has nothing to do with the underlying claims. This is all posturing in order for people not to interpret either side, and especially Lively saving face, right? Because everybody who's been reporting on this, you and I have talked about this. Her lawsuit was basically diluted to 10% of what it actually started with. And then as this evidence coming out, it looks like she perjured herself. Like it was not going to go well for her at trial. So that had to be fixed. And that's what
just to pause there. You agree this is a bad look?
Oh, she perjured herself.
I mean, I bring that up as a reason, but that could have very well suddenly been a reason if they're like, oh crap, Ange said I didn't, and I said on like, could that have legitimately been a client conversation where it's like, you just perjured yourself. We got to end this. There's no more fighting. You think it could be as simple as that?
It could, well, it could be many simple things like that, right, where they're going to grill you on this one and on this and on this one. It's not going to go well for you. You're going to lose the jury. You have to come up with something to avoid this. And again, you and I have talked about this. It's not just being an unsuccessful plaintiff like normal people like you and me. She is a brand and she's connected to a larger brand. There are further implications of not being successful in this lawsuit beyond just, oh, I didn't get the win, right? And that's really what they're thinking about. And this is a great move for her. Settling only, in my opinion, based on the evidence of what was going to come down, really is the saving grace for Lively, because I don't think it was going to go well for her, and it would have been worse beyond the lawsuit had it gone forward with just one example of her being caught in a lie.
Now, again, I 100% agree with you. This is all PR. And in fact, it almost feels like there was a clock ticking of, I got to go to the Met Gala. Like it's happening. Because you got to prep for this. A lot of people are saying, oh, she snuck on. The Met Gala doesn't work that way. The guest list is very set in advance. Like I don't believe any of those rumors. She clearly was set to be on this Met Gala. Do you think that could have been a genuine ticking clock to sort of, I'll pay you the money. This is what it is. We're going to give you all this, but you can never tell anybody about the money. And by the way, we're going to leak to TMZ that there's no way there was money. But that way I can, say it's all done, show up to the Met Gala, get my looks and move on with my life. Do you think that could be part of this?
Yeah, it's absolutely, because these dates are set, months in advance. It could be one of those things. And also, again, this is happening in New York. right? This is your venue. This is where your jury pool is. Like, I'm in LA and we get news about the Met Gala. Imagine in New York, it's much bigger. So had she been a plaintiff in a case that was ongoing and not settled, and she's coming to this could be really bad optics on the stand 2 weeks from now.
Right.
So now then this implies that it was more important for her to show up than for her to advocate for her rights.
Hmm.
Has its own implications, right? So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not in her head. I don't know her personally. It's just based on what people are reporting. But if this was something important to her, so that she could just be there, I think it's very
Would you advise a client in the midst of this deal to go to the Met Gala, given all that's on the line?
no. I would have told her you cannot, don't show up. Like you
Right.
cannot.
And if the case was still on deck, this would have been an awful look for her because they
Yeah.
would have been able to use, damages. You were literally photographed and accepted into the exclusive A-list invite of the Met Gala, which would have been gone against everything she's claiming. No.
Absolutely. Which, if the case was still going forward in 2 weeks, every single free minute of her time should be prepping for her to be on the stand. It should be prepping for her to be on the stand and working with somebody, 12 hours a day of how it's going to go, how are you going to react, what happens, asking the hard questions, confronting her, how are you going to react when this happens. This is how trials are really prepared for, especially with these stakes. You got to spend hours and hours and hours a day leading up to these things. And I'm sorry, Blake, you cannot go to the Met Gala. We have to prepare. That's what should have happened.
Right. And knowing the Met Gala requires so much prep to sign up sponsors, fashion people, the makeup, everything. This does kind of imply to me, I want to know your thoughts, that she clearly was never taking this seriously to begin with. This must have been, as I look at it, it seems like she was trying to get out of this court date if she's prepping for a Met Gala 2 weeks before it. No?
Yes, that I think that's a fair characterization, but also the way this started, it never felt serious, right? Just the way it started felt more of a PR campaign from the get-go with the New York Times article. That's the way it always felt to me. I'm like, how? And I've always reacted this way. Like, this is really weird. Like, it doesn't feel like the normal way a plaintiff acts when they're really upset. It feels like they're just trying to control the narrative. And I feel this is just an extension of that. And I think that is something most people kind of intuitively absorbed and why they got rubbed the wrong way from the beginning.
Now, Brian Freeman was on. He's making the rounds. He's doing some shows. He's on Billy Butch. I think he's going to be on Zach and Dana. And so Donna. So I want to play this clip though on Billy Butch because it's made a lot of us go, wait, what?
I think where the parties are is where people are working on an agreement and the terms of an agreement, and I think in concept certain major points have been agreed to, which which we're very pleased with. And as they always say, right, the devil is in the details, and we'll see what the agreement looks like and work on that agreement. And but as far as we'd like to believe we have an agreement, and we
have a statement, but we don't have an agreement.
Is pointing out, and we also don't have anything. We don't have anything on court listener yet. So should we be concerned that this might not be over? And then how much leniency does the judge give clients like this, knowing the date's coming up and they're still bickering about details of a settlement? Because if they don't settle, right, and then the court goes by it, is there some sort of punishment or what do you think?
So this is what normally happens. You're on the brink of trial, trying to save money. You resolve the case before you get into stuff that's irreversible. Maybe some stuff's irreversible anyway. And what you're supposed to do, you're supposed to let the court know so that the court stops working on the cases. The court doesn't have to make rulings. The court doesn't have to call a jury. So you have to let the court know. Federal courts are notorious for really dismissing the case once they find out the case was resolved. Like, because what happens is both parties have to sign the same document. We have settled the case. Here you go, Judge Lyman. And typically you ask like, hey, can you take trial off calendar and put a hearing, 30 or 60 days out to see how the settlement's going? Well, most federal judges, in my experience, will just go, thanks for letting me know. I'm dismissing your case, and I'll take jurisdiction. If you want to come back because there's an issue, or you want to put the trial back on calendar, you can, but your case is dismissed up until then. So, so that's what the court cares about. The court just cares like, I don't want you on my docket. Go away. And if you want to come
Yeah,
back, it's going to be a lot
especially
of work.
this docket.
Yeah,
Jesus.
look at this massive docket. So, and then people are like, "Hey, I thought there was a deal." Well, there's a deal in principle. It's a handshake, over the phone, most likely. And what really, really matters is that both sides agree to their obligations of the deal, whatever they are, other than this statement, in writing. It becomes a separate contract. And the contract can be anywhere from 9 pages to 23 pages. And you can imagine how long it's going to be on this one. And the non and so it's going to be so everybody buys their piece. Sometimes it's just a release from the plaintiff. Sometimes it's a mutual release, like we'll release, everybody's releasing everybody. There's the Stephanie Jones stuff. Does Stephanie Jones get thrown in there too? Does she have to be a signatory? There's all these other things and implications. Can you testify and help either side in the Stephanie Jones case? What are the terms of that? How do we deal with that?
NDAs. What are we allowed to share about our experience in this on the set?
All those things are being worked out, the minutia, right? On top of whatever the terms are. But I personally don't believe there's not some type of monetary consideration for one of the parties to agree to this, because you're too far in. Is everybody gonna be like, okay, it's a loss, sorry? And to me, it's so unbelievable. It's unbelievable that for at least Baldoni, who saw, and there's attorneys to be like, we're gonna win. Right? We can't ask for fees, but we're going to win. We're this far out. Let's just go. I don't believe that he agreed to that statement and nothing in return. There's got to be something in return, and we'll never know about it, but there's got to be something. But there's non-monetary terms, like if anybody discusses X, for each time you get a penalty of like, $20,000. Like there's all these things, and they're very, very important. The deal is not done until Lively signs it. Well, until the attorneys approve it as to what it looks like. And that could take a couple weeks. But it's not done until Lively signs it and Baldoni signs it. And then you have a deal. But before then, there's always a chance that one side goes, you know what, I don't like this. Let's go back to Lyman and get the trial back on calendar. It's always possible, depending on who's motivated.
Oh my God, can you imagine? But clearly it's not going to happen in 2 weeks. If anything, he's going to do what you said. I mean, it's interesting. Who could have pushed it? There's now rumors, or we'll talk more about this during our live without Ron, but there's rumors that Ryan Reynolds was the one who pushed her to finally settle. She wasn't going to lose her marriage too. This could be a reason, right? He was very instrumental, but he might have eventually, as we saw, literally he was in charge of the cuts. We're learning a lot of this was coming in, but maybe there is a realization here where she was like, finally gave in, was like, no. And he sort of said it. There's also insurance, right? That's another thing people aren't talking about. I imagine there were some production insurances or things that may have also put some pressure to pay, because going to trial is expensive, right? And the real person who makes that call isn't even Justin. It's Steve Sarowitz, who I assume is the one footing the bill for Wayfair. So could there have been some other monetary insurance or other potential Ryan type of pressures, you think, that ultimately made that decision happen?
So again, Ryan Reynolds is a very successful business person, and he didn't get that way because he's stupid, right? He's a very, very smart guy, and he has business acumen. And what I imagine happened was that between the Manat firm and the new firm that he brought on, he got someone told truth to power, which is like, listen, this is what the jury's going to hear. This is no longer speculation, right? This is what's going to be presented to them. And the jury's going to hear this, and this is going to be the effect of that. And chances are it's not looking good for your wife, Mr. Reynolds. So either you both have to come to an agreement, you have to influence her, or you have to be the one to be like, you know what, this is not going to go well. Let's figure out a deal of what will make, sense for Justin, for him to agree not to stop the trial, not to put Blake Lively on the stand, not to have Baldoni's attorneys cross-examine Blake Lively, not to bring in Taylor Swift, not to there's a cost to that. And that's why I keep saying, I can't imagine there's no type of monetary or financial consideration, either now, later, or in some other type of deal coming down the line to Baldoni, because I think he gave up more for doing this because of what was going to happen. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's my take.
Yeah, no, but as for the insurance purposes, do you think there's a production insurance or somebody else that also could have been part of this decision?
I think so, but I think the numbers are so big. Insurance policies can range anywhere from $1 million to $5 million dollars. I think they've burned through most of that because most of the insurance companies having to do with employment-related matters are what we call burning policies. So that means, let's suppose you have $1 million set aside for insurance. You pay your self-insured retention or deductible of like 25,000. Well, guess what? That $1 million gets smaller because the attorneys are being paid from that million. And I'm fairly sure the attorneys cost a big chunk of that. So is there a possibility that an insurance adjuster said, "Hey guys, now that we're here, give the money up"? Sure, but I don't know how much that would have been at this point because they must have burned through so much of it, unless it's some ungodly number like 5 or 10 million, which do exist. But yes, adjusters can have a big say as long as the demands are being made according to the statutory principles that force the insurance companies to really care about paying them.
So the Jen Abel case is still there against Stephanie Jones. I guess that was my last sort of questions for you. That could be part of the settlement too. That
Sure.
Justin and Blake's involvement can't be in that case. I mean,
no,
could there be
you
stuff
can't
we don't know
prevent-
yet, or could that still be a saving grace for Justin's side to know, well, we still got that, and they can sort of say, we're not settling about that. We're just settling this one.
You can't prevent people from testifying in court. NDAs don't prevent it. Settlement agreements don't agree. That's an unlawful provision. You can't be silenced through a settlement agreement. But because this fight's coming down the line, and these issues that are not being presented in trial here, at some level will be presented in the Stephanie Jones trial, I imagine they're trying to negotiate that case as well. Because what's the point, right? What's the point of resolving this case if some of the embarrassing stuff's going to come out in that case anyway? And it's the same set of attorneys. So I believe so. So I imagine that's one of the things that they're going to have to take a couple weeks to kind of work out. Be like, well, we don't want embarrassing here, and we don't want embarrassing things over there. How do we resolve that case too? So that those parties resolve their case, right? Stephanie Jones, is there a separate, side deal, or is it part of a one large contract, which could happen?
And then just to clear, because you told me in text, Justin can't still appeal this case, right? It's his cases against Lively are tossed along with the settlement, correct?
Yes. So, well, first of all, before the settlement, he was no longer a party, right? So by operation of law, he can. He should consult.
But he had his own cases. What I'm asking, the ones that he still had a chance to appeal his own cases against Blake.
It depends. It depends on the terms of the agreement. Now he could have agreed, I won't move over to trial. We won't try your case, Blake, but I'm reserving my right to move forward and do an appeal of the decision kicking out my case. That's something that I know I just really made things complicated, but it's possible. But I imagine. This is what I imagine, because it would cost so much money to do that from an attorney fee perspective, is that everyone is buying their piece. What is it costing Lively to buy her piece versus what is it costing Justin to buy his piece? And that is the question I have asked myself. And that's why I think it had to have cost Lively more. Or Baldoni should have said it would have cost more than for him.
Is there any version of this where you think Baldoni paid Blake, given the status of what he had in that case?
I don't see why he would. I don't see an attorney telling him to. I don't see it.
So you agree he was leading to win. And so it seems like Lively is the one that then would likely have paid. How much do you think that is worth in a case like this with the damages they're throwing out there?
I don't know.
50 million, 100 million, more than 100 million?
No. I don't think, because at that level, that's probably more than what she herself would have suffered in the long run. It's probably a reimbursement of his fees, of Wayfair's fees. Like, listen, just make us whole, as if this never happened. Which is, less than 5, more than 1. That's what I think, but I have no idea. I have no idea. Is it possible that Baldoni and Wayfair became, magnanimous and are practicing monks who's like, you know what, we believe in karma and what's happened has happened. We will just let it go and meditate on it. Is that possible? Sure,
Probably actually knowing that. Yes, the Baha'i. Yeah, it is.
it's possible, but I just don't see. There's just so much bad blood. There has to have been something he got in return. Something. I don't know. Something he got in return. So it doesn't have to be money. It could be an ownership interest of something. It could be
You're making the sequel.
making a sequel or setting
Can you
up.
imagine? I mean, people would go. They'd love to see a train wreck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh
Absolutely.
my God. Well, I'm excited because guess what? The documentary is going to now be even more fireworks since we didn't get a jury. So Ron's in it. You can still get our shirt. This is the last chance to get the shirt. Go over to our website, popcornplanet.com or endswithjustice.com. Sign up today, become a member, but also pick up the investor pack while it's still there. Scroll down, you'll see it. Ron, always a pleasure. People are always excited to see you and see your thoughts. So thank you for always making the time. Make sure we're watching live, I think. So make sure you're watching. Whether you're watching live or on the replay, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell for alerts, smash that thumbs up as well, and leave your comments down below on what you think about all of this.